Now, if you don't know, about a few days ago, this man right here, Kyle, if you don't know who Kyle is, he's the man right here in the green sweater. He is a member of the Nug Boys. He is a founder of Happy Dad. You can see it around the area in the picture here. And he's a part of the Full Send podcast. In this podcast, he interviews Aiden Ross. Now, Kyle, the founder, one of the founders of Happy Dad, now he actually sits down with Aiden Ross. They have a conversation about Kendrick and Drake. Now, the interesting part about Kyle is that Kyle has given a few sponsorships out to a few people. Now, during the time of the Kendrick and Drake beef, that some people that are sponsored by Happy Dad actually are pro Drake. Now, this had been speculation ever since the beef had started. And after the fact, people were talking about, oh, well, a lot of people that are sponsored by Happy Dad are real pro Drake. A lot of people that are sponsored by Happy Dad seem to be rooting for Drake. That's kind of been the narrative online when it comes to Happy Dad being involved in this beef. And then you have this co-founder, Kyle, the co-founder of Happy Dad, sitting down with Aiden Ross. And we know Aiden Ross has been very vocal about the issues between Drake and Kendrick Lamar. Obviously, he stands by Drake. And people have heard about Kyle and his relationship with Drake because Kyle likes Drake. A lot of people that seem to be sponsored by Happy Dad that are in the YouTube space have been kind of a little pro Drake, is what people are saying. But then there's other sponsors too, like Snoop Dogg, where, you know, Snoop Dogg, take it how you will, has been kind of on the fence with everything. But you get the gist of it. Snoop, whatever the case may be. A lot of people are saying that if you got a Happy Dad next to you in your video, you're compromised, right? And I could have brushed that all to the side a long time ago until I seen a couple of videos of Kyle, the founder of Happy Dad, speaking to Aiden Ross in this video, and then also talking about how he has some type of favoritism and how he has a favorite in the beef. You know, back then he did a video that he released on his TikTok where he had first met Drake. And this is kind of where I see, oh, it all makes sense. So he's actually pro Drake as well.
Drake last night, finally.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa.
We met him last night, yeah.
Dude, I was in bed. I was fucking making Pillsbury cookies with the girl and shit. I was like dipping my Pillsbury cookies in milk and shit.
Who
and
hit you?
Rocks. OVO Rocks.
Oh, okay.
He was like,
come out.
we're having a party. It was at like a venue,
Yeah, it was
like
a
a
venue.
warehouse type shit.
What was it for?
His birthday. We're like, fuck. Like, so we missioned down there, and then, yeah, it was dope.
So Kyle says that he met Drake. Kyle says that he was invited by a member of OVO by the name of OVO Rocks. This is OVO Rocks. Apparently, this is the person that was able to get Kyle to meet Drake on Drake's birthday. So this is what he said in the video, and this is the person that introduced him to Drake. So obviously, if you're tapped in with OVO members and they're getting you tapped in with the boy, it's obvious and clear as day that there is going to be some type of favoritism when it comes to the Happy Dad owner, Kyle. But my whole thing is, and I've said it time and time again, who you go for in this beef, who you root for, or who you listen to, that's your opinion. That's what you think, and that's who you prefer. And obviously, Kyle's going to prefer Drake because there's already that type of relationship that they've had with mutual friends and the relationship that they probably built, if they built one, when they met together. So I know that Kyle is pro Drake. You know, I know he's going for Drake. I know he's rooting for Drake, just like Aiden Ross is. That he kind of uses this interview with Aiden Ross, because we know Aiden Ross's stance with Kendrick. We know he's been vocal about Kendrick and Drake and the beef. I just find it interesting how he takes this stance with this interview. He uses this time to interview Aiden Ross, whose name has also been mentioned in this beef. And they bring up several things before they talk about the issues between Kendrick and Drake. And this is where Aiden Ross talks about his issues with the battle, talks about his issues with the Super Bowl. The questions start off real easy, real smooth, real transition. Like, you know, Kyle asked him, oh, have you heard Drake's new album? Aiden Ross gives his opinion on it. Obviously, he's going to like the album because he likes Drake. And then he talks a little bit more about the situation with the album and Spotify, and then the situation with Drake and Spotify. And then Kyle just throws it in there, right? He says, oh, yo, what was up with that? You know, and then he has Aiden Ross basically break it down to where they're accusing Spotify of throwing Kendrick in there in advertisements, or if you select certain words in the search list, it's going to bring out Kendrick Lamar instead of Drake. Basically, this whole angle that they went with, that they were suppressing Drake through Spotify, that they were suppressing him, they weren't showing his music first, that they were showing Kendrick Lamar. All this evidently was not true. All of this is false. Every time that you look up Drake on Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, whatever the case may be, you'll be able to find the music, find the album from Drake that you're looking for. So if you're looking for the new album that Drake had dropped, Triple S For You, you will be able to see it the minute that you open up any digital streaming platform. So he has them break this down. Things that we already know are false, but this is something that they are doing on this podcast, I feel like, to kind of just throw like some help to Drake's way, media wise, throw help in his way. Let's do this interview where we make this clip go viral, where we're talking about the beef and how we're giving our opinion on it. But in this time, it's in favor of Drake and the music that he's been putting out and his perspective of the beef and how they look at it. And I think the funniest part right here is when Kyle had cut Aiden Ross off and said, well, he is good, because Aiden Ross says, like, there is songs from Kendrick that I do like. And then they talk about the Super Bowl and all that stuff and the song selection that he had chose. And then Kyle says, no, I do like Kendrick Lamar's songs, but who doesn't have good songs? And then he compares Kendrick to Meek Mill. Like, bro, you couldn't, like, all right, let's not even go there. Like, we're not going to compare Kendrick Lamar to Meek Mill. No disrespect to Meek Mill, but bro, we are not doing that. No, not at all. Two totally different artists. But anyways, he's trying to bring up the fact that anybody that Drake has dissed with in the past, anybody that Drake dissed in the past has a good catalog. That's their argument right now. This is them basically doing backhanded compliments. They're going to try to compliment Kendrick Lamar. They're going to try to say that he has a catalog, and then they're going to hit it with a rebuttal. They're going to hit it with a but, and then they're going to talk about how they think Drake is better. That's what they're kind of doing here. And I think this was all done on purpose, so that way they could kind of just throw some help to the boy, throw some help to Drake's way, media-wise. We'll run this clip up. And then just when you couldn't think that Kyle was being more pro-Drake, he decides to say that he went to one of the concerts in Australia. So I guess he attended the Anita Max Win tour, and this just made it even more clear. Drake's over there in Australia right now. He's doing this tour. I'm not sure if it's finished already at this point, but he's been doing this tour since the new year had started. Kyle attended it. After Kyle attended it, he comes and he sits down and he does an interview with Aiden Ross. Aiden Ross has been going hard against Kendrick Lamar in regards to Kendrick and Drake's beef. And then also being the founder of Happy Dad and its position in this beef has made its name for itself for being pro-Drake. So the fact that he's done all this, gone and met Drake in person through OVO affiliates, has been supportive of him, has been sponsoring people with Happy Dad who have been very vocal in regards to Drake and Kendrick's beef, but mainly being pro-Drake, being on Drake's side. So when I hear these things that they're saying, obviously it's negative things towards Kendrick Lamar, and I hear the way that they're talking about Drake and everything else that comes before that, it really made me feel like this whole podcast was for this conversation right here. Mind you, this is not a long podcast. This is only a 45-minute podcast. Usually podcasts with people, interviews, they run about an hour, maybe two. So it feels like this podcast was cut off very early, which even furthers my thoughts of it just being a purposely made podcast for people just to hear this clip where they're talking about Kendrick and Drake. Because no other clip here, besides probably the one where Aiden Ross talks about Kanye West, no other clip here has been going viral about the conversations that they had in this podcast, but those two situations, the Drake and Kendrick beef and their thoughts on it, and what Kanye West said to Aiden Ross. Obviously, those were two things that happened with Aiden Ross recently. It feels like this was all done so there could be different opinions voiced about Drake to the public. And now it's making it more clear, at least for me at this time, that there is something fishy going on. Now, I can't say for sure that they're doing this all on purpose, but you mean to tell me that you're the Happy Dad founder? We know who's sponsored by Happy Dad. We have Ak and all of them that are sponsored pro Drake, all that. We have the fact that you had met Drake at his birthday party and met him through OVO members, OVO affiliates that you talked to. We know that you've gone to the Anita Max Win tour as of recently, and then you leave that tour, come sit down, and then speak with Aiden Ross, who he said some things bad about Kendrick Lamar and his stance on Kendrick Lamar. Now, granted, the things that they're saying in this interview aren't off the wall disrespectful like the things that you probably heard from other people or things that you've seen on the internet, but it is calculated. And what's calculated is them being vocal on their love for Drake, preferring Drake over Kendrick Lamar in this interview and speaking on the situation and the narrative is them really just trying to help Drake and the way that the media is viewing him and how the public is viewing him. I thought it was an interesting thing to point out only because of the situation with Happy Dad. I know Happy Dad had a narrative in regards to this beef, you know, compromise. Happy Dad have been in the same sentence for a really long time. And now it just looks like everybody that's with Happy Dad is starting to seem pro Drake. That's just what it looks like, in my opinion, humbly, respectfully. I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm just saying that's what it looks like. Keep it alleged, though. And like I said, I don't care who you root for in the battle. What I'm just trying to point out was that there was this conversation about Happy Dad and how there was a narrative that Happy Dad could have been somebody that's trying to push pro Drake. And here we have one of the founders of Happy Dad just getting off a tour, seeing Drake in Australia, coming back, interviewing Aiden Ross to what? To make the boy look good in public, to make Drake look good in public? I don't know. Y'all tell me how you feel about this. Y'all tell me how you feel about Happy Dad, Aiden Ross, this interview, what they said. I think this is going to further push that narrative about Happy Dad, and anybody tapped in with Happy Dad is running with a narrative. But I'm just saying this is furthering that narrative by doing stuff like this. And you could tell by all the backhanded compliments that you hear in this interview. Say one thing nice about Kendrick and then follow up with a bad thing and then say something good about Drake. It's just an interesting thing to see, and seeing which media outlets are pushing what artists. You get me? Like, it's just a very interesting thing to look at. But y'all tell me how you feel about this. We'll keep it alleged. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video, man. Peace.